Board returns from executive session at 6:59 PM, so we'll start and no action was taken, we'll start our committee of the whole. We only have one, actually we have, what? We did it. Our first item is a presentation from Friendly Honda, and this is involving an application for a zoning amendment. So I know we have some representatives here from Friendly, and Mr. Wilson, our development director, so.
Yeah, so thought I'd kick
like
it
to
off.
start
And
it off.
I know
Okay.
the board is anxious to get back into executive session, so I've talked to the representatives from Friendly and asked them to kind of keep it brief. This is a discussion level tonight, meeting presentation. The eye be, toward an eye toward kind of getting a green light, or at least a sense of the board that you would be willing to entertain a rezoning of the properties that are located off of 44 as well as Easy Street. The folks from Friendly will take you through exactly what that means. But if the board is inclined, what I would propose is to put this on the town board agenda for next Wednesday, the regular meeting, to start the process for the environmental review, make the referral over to the planning board, as we have done on numerous other occasions. So again, this is sort of the kickoff. There is going to be, I'm sure, questions from some of the neighbors. Some of them are here tonight, but there is certainly plenty of opportunity. We've got at least 2 public hearings for both, one for the rezoning as well as for the site plan that will be scheduled at later dates, and people will have an opportunity to come forward and state their case. So without too much further, I'm just going to turn it over to Jennifer Van Tile.
Okay, thank you. Hello?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Van Tile from Cuddy and Fader, and here tonight also is Eric Kahn of Friendly Honda and Dominic DeCapua. With me here is George Vega from John Meyer Consulting, has been doing the site plan work on the project. And also here tonight are 2 of the landowners who are proposing to sell their property to Friendly Honda. Nancy Adams and Betty Bomba are here tonight.
We don't know Betty Bomba. We've never heard of her. Right. Mrs. Bomba, how are you?
Fine, Todd, how are you?
Good.
Very different.
Yeah?
Yes, right, right. Friendly Honda has been a fixture of the town for so many years that I actually bought my first car there somewhere in the 1970s. Back in 2012, Eric Kahn presented a comprehensive site plan to the town, which was processed and reviewed, and I think all of you have seen the new buildings that have been built there. We eliminated a lot of unnecessary curb cuts, improved the landscaping, so the site is really together in a way that it never was before. This year, an opportunity has arisen to sort of bring the final element of an integrated site plan, and that is to incorporate the storage of auto inventory within the site itself. I think most of you know that up to now, Eric has stored his cars at Hudson Valley Office Park, which is about a mile away. And what that means, of course, is Eric is subject to a month-to-month tenancy in that location, which isn't ideal. And of course, there's a lot of driving back and forth of the automobiles. So to integrate all operations within the site, we are asking this board to consider, and the other boards in the town to consider, approval of what George will walk you through in just a minute, is asking you to move the present line. The Friendly Honda site is zoned BH, and we're asking the board to consider just moving that line, which separates the BH and the R20, a little bit to the east, so that it would incorporate 5 small lots which are presently zoned R20. Now, this is a project that will require reviews from every board in the town. Not only would it require a rezoning approval from you, but it would require a site plan approval by the planning board. It would require a lot consolidation by the planning board to approve merging these lots together, and it would involve the issuance of a special permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals and some minor variances. But as Neil alluded to, I think the most important thing that would happen before anybody makes a decision on this project is that a full coordinated environmental review would be done. So we're certainly not asking you tonight to make any decisions. Obviously, there's a serious review process that would have to be undertaken, as well as a number of public hearings. But what we are asking you to do is to start the process so that that hard look can be taken with plenty of opportunity for public comment. I just note briefly in response to what Neil said, Eric has communicated with neighbors, has tried to make this a totally transparent process. Efforts have been made in the site plan that's designed to date, I'm sure in response to continuing comment. He will continue to cooperate in meeting concerns as to landscaping. I think it's clear from the way he's been maintaining the site that he's making every effort to do that. So without further ado, George, if you would just briefly walk us through the site plan, then of course we're happy to answer any questions you have
Okay.
tonight.
Good evening, Board. Again, my name is George Vega from John Meyer Consulting. I'll just give you a brief overview of the proposed action. By merging these 5 lots, it gives us the opportunity to create this parking area for vehicle storage. I'll begin along Route 44. Essentially, we'll be able to eliminate 3 existing curb cuts and propose 1 centralized curb cut with approximately 10 vehicle storage or vehicle display spaces there. Again, we would landscape this to create a nice buffer along Route 44, and this curb cut would actually be used relatively minimally. The main access would be off of Easy Street, where we would have most of our deliveries for the truck deliveries and the day-to-day movement of the vehicles. Working around towards Easy Street, we would eliminate 2 curb cuts there. We would have a fence and a gate, and to screen these adjoiners to the west and the north, we propose 6-foot privacy fence, as well as supplemental landscaping in the existing buffer to further screen them. So with the 6-foot privacy fence and the proposed landscaping, we're looking to minimize the impact to the adjoiners as much as possible. And if you look at the plan, there's some large specimen trees going through the center, which we try to preserve, especially for the adjoiners on Hart Drive. This gives a good buffer towards Route 44 and the proposed lot. Stormwater we would handle on site, and again, heavy landscaping around the existing buffer. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, George, I'm sorry, I just meant, talk about the delivery of cars. Where did you say?
So the delivery would be from Easy Street, about 4 to 5 trucks a month. So it's not like a daily delivery.
So they can come in and out Easy Street.
Come in Easy Street, unload, and back out.
And the access that you're showing up on Route 44?
It's going to have a gate on it,
Okay,
and it's not really going to be used, especially maybe for, once in a while in emergency access.
okay.
That's what we're, and again, we're presenting this,
Right.
this is the application
Yeah,
we've submitted,
yeah.
and Joe, you know how often they get changed at the planning board level, but we have provided this gate for emergency access because we believe that the fire response people will ask for that kind of a gated entrance for emergency purposes. So what will ultimately be done with that remains to be seen after the planning board and your board, of course, reviews it.
It's just that it's just a shame to see a nice piece of property just having cars sitting there versus having a nice building.
Well, I guess our response to that would be that this is going to be part of a comprehensive site that's been planned in cooperation with the planning board and the zoning board. And We have already placed very attractive buildings on the site. We rebuilt the prep building, as everybody remembers, that was a mansard roof building very close to the road, and buildings have been refaced and improved. And I don't really think that the parking here will be that noticeable from the street because of all the measures that are incorporated here. Looking at it from an aerial view, it's obvious that it's for parking, and parking is, an integral part of having an automobile dealership. But as you're driving by or looking into the site from the side, we are maintaining an awful lot of landscaping and supplementing it. But of course, that will be one of the issues to be reviewed.
Joe, they are actually good neighbors. We're very proud to have Friendly in the area there. And my only concern I may have is I know that as you go up Hart Drive, it elevates. So the landscaping buffer that we're talking about to the backside, I just would hope that that would be something that can grow up tall enough to maybe protect them from having any light shine up towards them.
That's a good point.
Yep.
We'll continue to address that comment, but I think that you'll see that the landscaping that we are now retaining in the center of the site are very large existing trees that screen the view of even the existing site. So that's a central goal.
Yeah,
of
any
our
residents that
development.
have contacted me, it's been in favor of it. I know a few of the residents are here about it. If anybody is in the audience that isn't in favor of it, I would think we should give them a chance to come up and
Sure.
speak about it, and I'll make sure I can give them my name and number if they have any questions. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that, where I stand with that, but I do like it. Go ahead. Anybody?
Question about drainage. You said you're going to handle it on the site. How are you going to do that?
Conceptually, we'll have one or two open ground ponds designed in accordance with DEC regulations, given it is a car
One or
dealership.
two open ponds?
Retention ponds,
Detention,
that's kind
water
of,
quality
Because
ponds.
I'm sure you're going to go through it with the planning board, but that's a lot of pervious.
Additionally, we are proposing some green practices, which would be pervious pavement to try to
Where's the
reduce that.
runoff going to go?
The runoff right now comes through behind this property line, behind the used car lot, and actually goes underneath Easy Street, below grade, through the lot, and then discharges right back out here underneath Route 44.
Discharges to what under 44?
Box culvert,
A box culvert?
yes, sir, open box culvert.
A SWIP is going to be required, so that.
I understand that. I just,
yeah.
my first reaction was, where's all the water going to go? That's because they put me on the infrastructure committee.
In the design phase, it would either be,
Just by way of explanation to the existing drainage on the site, actually it is piped. The pipe is actually under several of the buildings as it comes through, but it does daylight out again at 44 and continues across, and there's a stream on the other side. There's an old mobile home park.
I know where that is.
Yeah.
Does the planning board make sure, is there some study they do to make sure the volume of water,
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
part of the planning process?
We have to, it's a
Okay.
requirement of
Then I'm
state law,
good.
yes. All that's going to be looked at.
you mentioned, impervious surface. Can you explain a little bit more about, what you have something planned that, other than just, blacktop?
the pervious pavement, which is a green infrastructure, water will actually be able to filter through instead of just a hard surface.
So it's a pavement that the water, allows the water to go through?
Right.
Pavers, or is it a pavement?
Either or, it could be a pavement where water actually could go through. They make it out of a recycled rubber, old tires, and water can actually filter down through that. So we would propose it around the perimeter just to reduce the impervious coverage. But regardless, we would have to meet all the DEC and town requirements for stormwater as far as pre and post development.
Yeah, there's a number of different ways to do this pervious pavement, and I recently saw a presentation that was done by someone in Fishkill about the different ways they can do it, and the techniques of applying it are very high-tech also. So I'm sure that different alternatives would be looked at as part of the review process, but the main point is that all of the pavement that is near the buffer and the fencing is proposed to be pervious pavement, again, because it's a green practice and supported by the DEC.
And Jennifer, in the far into that parking lot, how far are you from the property line? The one that, yeah, next to Hart Drive, that's parallel to Hart Drive?
The buffer is at least 40 feet. Plus, the 6-foot fence is on the inside of that. In other words, the side
Inside
that's
the 40
closest
feet,
to
right.
Friendly. So the neighbors would see,
You go up Hart Drive too, so you're also,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hart Drive is
but I don't
elevated.
think
Right.
noise is gonna be as much as maybe lighting, that's my concern, is
Lighting.
lighting.
Yeah, there was an issue on the planning board when we had the previous project, and I'm sure you have done a great job, let neighbors know, so I would suggest to do the same thing now. So the lights was an issue, as you remember.
right.
Noise of the lights.
Right, that was an issue on the site plan, that some of the old transformers on lights that have been there since the 70s or 80s or whatever, neighbors across the street actually commented on that, and those were changed. This is going to definitely be dark sky compliant lighting, and there will be very little noise. I mean, that's going to be one of the issues that would be studied in the environmental review process, but this is not, this is not going to be a publicly accessible area. This is going to be an area
Storage.
only where select employees would enter to bring a car over to the other site, so it's not going to be a high-traffic area. But in response to your point, we do want to respond to concerns of neighbors. So Eric himself has reached out. There will be public hearings held, and if people have any concerns in the meantime, they're welcome to call Eric, go over and ask questions. We will make a full public presentation at all the boards, but are also very happy to speak to any neighbors. that
Like I
are
said, I
concerned.
don't have anybody speaking out against it, so that's why I'm willing to move forward with it. It is a nice project.
Are there any residents here who have a question or would like to say anything? Okay, we will have a public hearing. If you do, you've got to come to the microphone. You know the routine.
Do we have to read her the warning?
No.
No swearing,
We
Mrs.
will
Butler.
have there will be public hearings on this as was originally stated, but just for tonight's purposes.
All right. All I'd like to do is ask you to really review this carefully. I've been there for 45 years. It used to be a really cool little place to live. My children grew up there. It was a great place. But the truth of the matter is that Honda encroaches on two sides now. And Joe's right. They're a great neighbor. They're very conscientious of what impact they have. But they're there. And so at a time when we would like to sell and my husband would like to stop plowing snow and, mowing lawns, it doesn't look like it's going to be even conducive for a residential area. So I ask you to do due diligence.
Matt, can you point out where your residence is?
He's right behind
Right in the
you,
middle, right,
back on the cul-de-sac of EZ Street.
right in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Oh, right here.
Right there.
So you're selling your house to Honda as part of this plan, is that it? Okay.
And you get a free car.
No.
No?
They tell me I'm getting a good deal, though.
Of course you are.
Come on, Dominic.
And I'll just point out to everyone that Mrs. Nancy Adams, who is also one of the neighbors whose property fronts on Route 44, is here this evening, but she told me on the way in that this is the first municipal meeting she's ever attended.
Oh, well,
so-
welcome, Mrs. Adams.
Congratulations and welcome.
For being here.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Okay. So,
The board have any,
Jennifer, how's the elevation behind the prop, where Mrs. Adams is? Is that as level as Honda, or does it go down or up? You know,
Mrs. Adams is along the Route 44 frontage.
Yeah.
That is pretty level. Councilman Conti is correct that as you are on Hart Drive, the roadway rises so that those houses are at a higher elevation and look down towards the site. So that makes screening a challenging thing or an issue that has to be addressed, that they're looking down anyway. But the frontage right along Route 44 is
Because you always worry about, and we've seen this happen on Spackenkill Road, you put a development on one side of the street and even across the other side of 44, they end up getting flooded because even though you have it going through your pipes under and down the street, it still comes out and ends up flooding somebody else out. We'll make sure during
Right.
that period,
yeah.
the ponds, the drainage ponds, the gardens, whatever gets put in there to retain the water does the right job, because it always seems to be, no matter what we do, engineering at the end where the water goes always seems to be one of our major issues. That's why we have Bill in charge
Right.
of the infrastructure now.
Well, that was one of the issues that was addressed extensively in the comprehensive friendly site plan in 2012, because there had been sort of a motley collection of parcels that had been developed over time. So the whole idea of the drainage there was studied extensively so that actually, because in this parking area, we have pervious pavement and are retaining a lot of the site as still completely landscaped and open, it's not going to be that much additional water. But as I said, a SWIP is definitely going to be required. So this is going to be studied till every T is crossed and I dotted,
Okay.
even without Joe on the board.
Joe,
Yeah,
I put my time in the planning board too.
right.
Anything else from anyone?
I know the Land Use and Planning Committee, and Ann, you could answer this, we looked at it, the project, and we thought high enough of it to move it forward, so. Have anything you want to add?
Nope. No, it looks like a good project, and I do hope that you look into as much of the pervious paving as
Right.
possible, especially since you're not going to be, the
Heavy
consumers
use,
aren't going to
right.
be watching around, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, because currently there's no wetlands there. There's not any drainage issues, so yeah, obviously we want to keep that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's a good point, and we will do that.
All right, well, thank you
All
very
right,
much
we
for the
thank you very much
presentation.
for your attention.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All
We'll be
right.
back next week if you're going to put that on.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Thank you.
be in touch. Thanks.
I'm gonna miss the office.
All right, one other item we have on our agenda is discussion with Neil Wilson concerning some properties that I'd like to consider to rezone to BN. I think a number of them have been operating in this fashion anyway, but he'll explain it further. Neil?
Yeah, thank you. This kind of issue, and the reason that we're bringing this to the board at this point, we've had a number of the properties that are on this list, the memo that I gave you, that have occasion needed use variances in order to resume operations. Case in point, the old Doughboys Restaurant on Fairview Avenue. There was a somewhat of an attempt earlier last year, or earlier this year, I should say, to apply for a use variance to reestablish the restaurant that had operated there for many years. It's in an R20 zone. The use had lapsed for more than 12 months, but when you look at the property, it's adapted to a restaurant-style use. The same thing came up with 131 Violet Avenue, which is also on this list. And they, in fact, received a use variance from the zoning board last month. And most recently, there is a new owner. I understand he actually closed on it, 22 De La Valle Place. It is it's a long-established neighborhood grocery with an apartment up over it. And basically, the entire structure takes up most of the lot. But again, it was one of those ones that we looked at and said, if somebody stopped using this as a grocer, that neighborhood has lost a convenience store. So what we did, I asked staff to kind of go through and take a look at some of these properties and come back with a kind of a recommendation. And that's what you're seeing here in this list. Some of these, and I'm trying to get a sense from the board, do you agree with staff recommendation or not? So I'd just like to go through these fairly carefully, and there's actually one that came up more recently after I had prepared the memorandum for the board that I'll discuss at the end. So the first one on the list is the old Fairview Men's Club. Right now it's vacant. It's not used. It's in an R20 zone. If it were to be used for residential, my sense is that the building would have to be taken down. I don't know what else it might be adaptable adaptable for, but certainly it's in Councilman Saffone's ward, so I would look for him to, kind of give me an idea of whether or not he would agree with rezoning that as BN. Same thing as I just mentioned, the Doughboys Restaurant, which I think is probably a little bit of an easier case to make, and again, we're talking about BN zoning, which does not allow for drive-throughs, limits the size of the commercial use. The other, let's see, going down the list, K&D Deli, Papa Vera Buckley Tax, and then actually in the bottom, just because of the way that La Pavillon, those properties are all in Salt Point, and they're they're right in a row. It's where North Grand comes out onto Salt Points. The K&D Deli operates the old corn crib now, and you've got the La Pavillon just to the north of it, and the old tax place to the south. Now, before we changed the zoning in 2007, all three of those were in the BN zone. When we redid the zoning map, those became part of the Salt Point Center, which you may remember last year, we actually moved further south to the intersection of Smith Street and Innis Avenue. When we did that, we rezoned these properties for R20, but they're already in use and adaptable for commercial, and we think that the BN zoning ought to be reinstated on those three. And again, those are in Mike's ward. 131 Violet Avenue, again, I mentioned that received a use variance, but this is the kind of thing that, if the restaurant isn't successful, 12 months goes real fast. All of a sudden, we're back into that non-conforming use, and the neighborhood has lost a small, kind of well-adapted little restaurant. So we think that, again, that's one that has merit. 43 Violet Avenue, that's actually the property that is next to the Dahlia property that the board just took action on the overlay zone at the last meeting. There's a restaurant there. It's not currently in operation. It is zoned for residential. And again, the clock is ticking, but it is adaptable, and we think that it could continue to be used as a restaurant. It's also immediately across from the heavy industrial area where we've got Great Eastern and some of the other uses. The Stewart's Ice Cream out here on Dutchess Turnpike, that's in an R20 zone. I think that always had been, and actually this is across the street, just down the road from the Friendly Honda. We think that probably ought to be zoned for BN as well. And again, a rezoning for Stewart's. It's been there a long time. It's not likely to go out of business anytime soon. Seems to be a successful store. But where it is a non-conforming use in the R20, making simple changes all of a sudden can trigger variances that just sort of complicates the review process. So a BN zone, we think for that particular use would be, or that particular property would be a good idea. Same thing with Dipley's Deli, which is on Vassar Road.
Bill, down in your-
Bill, down in your area. I mean, that convenience store has been there decades.
It was a gas station before it was a
It was a
convenience.
gas station a long time ago, yeah.
Well, not that long ago.
No, a real long time ago.
Must have been a long time ago, Bill.
A long time. 22 De Laval Place I talked about, La Pavillon I talked about, and then 68 Van Wagner Road. This is actually the property that is immediately to the south of the Dallywall restaurant, which apparently is no longer, that's no
little
longer in
deli.
operation. But it's the
Golf cart leasing.
place.
So
It's in commercial use. It is adjoined, it's currently zoned for multifamily. It adjoins a multifamily, a bunch of apartments there, but you have the Dollywall property immediately to the north, which is zoned for BN. It seemed to make sense to include that as part of the.
And part of the problem with these properties is once they, as Neil said, discontinue the use, whether it's a restaurant or a deli, 12 months goes by, it's almost impossible to get, Doughboys a perfect example. We've had people call and want to open up a pizzeria there again, but because the use was discontinued for over 12 months, they can't do it. No one's going to come in and go through the expense of tearing down a structure, putting a house in that location. So it seems to us, rather than have an empty building sitting there, it's been years, it'll probably be years, we rezone it, and it makes it much more easier for them to move that property, have a pizzeria created there again, and it just seems to make sense.
As long as it's not
It must
historical
be-
nature, I have no problem with
It
it.
must be a challenge to, to rezone the area sites because you got a residential house and then you have an industrial and then you have a business there. So, and I agree. I mean, you have a house right next to, next to the golf cart place.
Yeah.
And then you have the former bowling alley there and what do you do?
Yeah, exactly, exactly, yeah.
The Associates isn't going anywhere. I support that for sure. Stewart's is doing a great job. I support the changes for those two.
Yeah, I would say with each of you, look at the locations in your wards, make sure you agree with what's being proposed, but,
And, the question will come up, is this spot zoning? I would suggest no. I'll defer to my colleague to my left, Adrian. But spot zoning is typically arises in the case where you have an applicant who has requested a zone change that is completely at odds with everything around it. What I'm proposing is that the board, one, make these changes on its own motion, and do so in recognition of the historic uses of these properties. These are probably things that over time, we probably should have picked up originally, but, they're small, discrete, little pieces of property, easy to kind of overlook them. I would argue this is more of a correction, and in many cases, particularly, again, 22 De La Valle, it's a neighborhood convenience store. You take a look at all the little homes and the little lots over there. It's it's a place to go get a soda, get some milk. So it's certainly serving a function. I think that we have a responsibility to try to, where we can, protect those businesses and ensure that they continue to operate for the neighborhood.
Yeah, the bad news that they're very small parcel, wish they were bigger to make something. And
Right,
it's just like,
right,
it's like a
yeah.
puzzle here and there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So take a look at the list if and I'll be, kind of in touch with all of you over, the next week or so, and if you're in agreement, what I'd like to do is to sort of package these up and try to get these on a future agenda, and kind of handle them en masse rather than on a case-by-case basis.
Would we have to have a public hearing?
Yeah, that's what I
For
was gonna
each
say.
one of them, or one
we'll
for
do
all?
one.
Well,
public hearing for all.
we've got to notice each one individually, but we hold them all together. In other words,
Okay.
we do them all,
No, Neil, question, are these properties, are they owned by individual or the banks, foreclosure? If you,
variety.
Doughboys, for instance, I believe the bank has it.
Okay.
The Pavilion, K&D Deli, and, those two, that's Rettel owns those two.
Yeah.
I don't know who owns Papa Vera. It's a,
Yeah. I thought somebody had moved into the tax place. That's kind of that funky one that
it's-
looks like a
oh, it-
castle.
There's
Yes.
accountants in there.
yeah.
Yeah, I
There's somebody
thought
in
there's-
there. It's
I
not,
thought there was
it's not
somebody in
vacant, but
there.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't know who owns it.
Yeah, the other one, the French restaurant, that appears to be empty.
Right. The 22 De La Valle place was just purchased actually by the fellow who did the very nice job on the corner of the old gas station, the corner of Cedar Avenue and Hooker Avenue.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's coming in, the place needs to be cleaned up, he's done a very nice job
He's
over
done a
there.
very nice job
So,
there.
he's established a track record, so.
Yeah.
But I can provide more information, try to find out the disposition of these, kind of going forward if you need to.
is the one on 51 Fairview, are they paying the property tax, the bank?
Well, I don't know who's paying the taxes. If it's in tax arrears, the way actually the county makes the town whole, so the county's kind of out the taxes. We don't feel the pinch. I don't know that they're in arrears. Like I say, I think the bank may have it. If they're smart, they're paying the taxes on it.
Okay. Okay.
We'll talk, Neil, but yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so
Thank
we'll-
you, Neil.
Yeah,
we'll talk.
please look over the.
Thank you. Great job on finding them
Property.
and bringing it to our attention. It's getting ahead of the curve.
Right, great.
All right.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, committee reports. Finance,
Nothing to report this time.
Fire Advisory,
I have nothing to report at this time.
Government Ops,
Nothing to report.
Land Use and Planning,
Nothing to report.
Personnel,
Nothing to report?
Recreation,
Just our new pavilion will be started next week in Greenville. If anybody wants to go by and check it out, it's all ready to go.
In summer camps?
We'll be ready to go much
Yep.
right after
And
that.
you can sign up for your summer camps now, so
Right.
it's ongoing.
I'd just like, for the record, being on the committee, I think Tom and is doing a wonderful job. He's taking care of the property, it's really good.
I think so.
Want to mention that.
Does
I
care.
agree. Seniors?
Just at the senior prom that was held by Brian's wife in Arlington High School, I think, was phenomenal. Nothing but rave reviews over it. And as usual, the senior center seems to be a shining star in the town.
Technology and equipment
Nothing to report,
and infrastructure.
nothing to report.
That brings us, and to our committee of the whole. Is there any residents who would like to address the board on any town issues? All right, seeing no one, I make a motion to return to
Second.
executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Town board returns to executive session at 7:33.
I heard a little